is The Life and Times of Mr. Spock. The Life and Times of Mr. Spock.
Yes, The Life and Times of Mr. Spock. Not the green-blooded alien that you all know and love. Not also, neither, nor the wayward pediatrician that spared the rod and spoiled the children. No, this Mr. Spock is a cat. He's my cat. He's a black and white domestic short hair. Women love things that are soft and furry. It's a fact. My wife is no different. While we were in college, she waged a campaign to get a cat. She said, we need to have a cat in our tiny little apartment. The problem was, as a child, I had cats. And they urinated on my clothes when I left them on the floor. And they scratched me when I tormented them. I like dogs. But this apartment was too small to get a dog, so eventually I yielded, and one day we went to the animal shelter to get my wife a cat. And there were cats galore. There were cats all in their cages, and they were sleeping and bathing. They wouldn't deign to look at us. They remained aloof in their catness despite their imprisoned state. All except one cat. One little black and white kitten down at the end of the hallway. He was glued to the cage of his door, and he was, meow! Help me! He was calling, take me home! And I couldn't leave him there. I had to take him home immediately. So that day we brought him home. Now, in our apartment, in our dining room, we had this wall-sized mirror. And it was the bane of mealtime conversation. Because as I was eating, I'd be talking to my wife, we'd be trying to have a conversation. I couldn't help but look at myself in the mirror, fascinated by my own image. Much to the disgust of my wife. Now, we put this cat on the floor, and I knew he was my brother. Because he immediately saw himself in that mirror, and fascinated by his own image, he was drawn to it with a loud smack! And he fell to the floor, dazed. And I also knew that life might be challenging for this small cat. But we needed a name. I, of course, suggested Booger. My wife rejected it. She thought it undignified. So I countered with Mr. Booger. Also rejected. Finally, it struck me. It was the pointy ears. The resemblance was uncanny. And I dubbed the cat Mr. Spock. And my wife agreed, because she's as huge a nerd as I am. And there was much rejoicing. Following that, of course, we didn't hit it off right away. There was some rough times. Our bed that we slept in at the time was a little short, and my feet hang off the end. And I like to shake my leg like this when I'm falling off to sleep, and I would just go to sleep. And this furry monster would jump up under the blanket, and he'd grab my toes. He didn't use his claws, with soft little furry toes, and it felt kind of nice until he chopped his big fangs into my toes. And I'd leap out of bed and I would say, cat! And I would streak through the apartment in my boxers, and I'd grab him and I'd drag him back to bed for mandatory cuddling. And he was humiliated into behaving in a better way. Later on, we became inseparable. When my wife moved to Dallas to go to grad school, it was a 3-hour drive there and back. I couldn't leave him at home, so I drove and he rode shotgun. He liked to sit in my lap and purr and look out the window. About every hour or so, he'd make a little patrol around the car just to check everything out. Yep. What he really loved was the chicken farm. We drove by this big, nasty chicken farm every time, and he'd put his face in the vent, and he'd put his ears back and go, and I was disgusted, and yet I felt those chickens. I felt them with me. That cat's been everywhere. He was all over Texas. He went to South Carolina. He went up to Connecticut, St. Louis. He flew out to Hawaii and back, and then we drove across the desert to California. That cat has more frequent flyer miles than I do. Miles than I do. Yep. Oh, he's also an accomplished hunter. Now, he doesn't have the best instincts. We had a little hamster. My wife likes to collect small and furry things. And I was worried about him with the cat, so we put his cage up on a tall shelf. You know, we had the little wood shavings and the tubes for him to crawl through and all that stuff. Sure enough, one day we come back from the movie theater, and the cage is on the ground. Hamster clippings everywhere. It looked like a serious cat-hamster melee had taken place. And we tore apart the apartment, searching, oh, Cleopatra, where are you? And then we saw Mr. Spock sitting in the corner. And we were disgusted. But then we saw her, sitting right there next to Mr. Spock, calm as could be, and he would batter around with his paws, and they'd play, and we'd take her down all the time when they'd play. So, instinct's not so great, but he was still a great hunter, and you can ask my wife. His favorite thing to do was to lurk in a doorway in the hallway, and as my wife walked by minding her own business, he would leap out and grab her by the legs, and she'd scream, and they'd run off, and it's very entertaining. The best pounce I ever saw him do, I walked into the office. My wife was sitting at the computer, she was typing, and the cat was right behind the chair, and his ears were back, and his tail was going 100 miles an hour, and I was, but I didn't say anything, because it was going to be too funny. Sure enough, the cat leapt up on her head, wrapped his paws around her head, and she stood up screaming, and the cat swinging behind her. He jumped off. I think it took off at least a couple of months off both their lives, but it was worth it. It was funny. They won't be good months anyway. Nowadays, my wife sleeps easier because Mr. Spock, he's less young, less thin, less agile, and less awake most of the time. He pretty much sits outside the bathroom door waiting for someone to come and sit on the porcelain cat-worshipping chair so that he can rub up on them as they do their business. And that's my friend, Mr. Spock.